Hi, I'm Dr. Stan Steindl. Welcome to Compassion in a T-shirt in session with Dr. Tony Fernando. Originally from the Philippines, Tony is a psychiatrist in Auckland, New Zealand. He has a number of professional interests, not least working with people who are experiencing sleep disorders, but also in compassion. He's recently completed his PhD, which was exploring cultivating compassion amongst medical doctors. He's an ordained Buddhist monk and a very good cellist, and he quite enjoys swimming in icy cold ocean waters. I hope you enjoy being in session with my friend Dr. Tony Fernando. Well, welcome, Dr. Tony Fernando. Thank you very much for being on Compassion in a T-shirt in session, although it's cold down in the southern hemisphere at the moment. So you've got your hoodie on and I've got...
Yeah, we're having a winter blast, actually, the lowest temperature ever in the past year. So
is that right?
Yeah, Wellington even had snow, so
yeah,
it's unusual.
Yeah,
it's quite cold.
Yeah, well, it's kind of cold here in Brisbane as well. I had to wear a hoodie to bed the other night. But, we're not very robust with that sort of thing here. We're used to hot and humid. So
yeah.
But it's so wonderful to get to chat to you. Of course, we are sort of colleagues and friends across the ditch, as they say. You're over there in New Zealand, and we've caught up several times, especially for me and you. It's been kind of through the Compassion Symposium at Kew, and you very generously come across and done some wonderful presentations for that. I know that you also have your Compassion in Healthcare conference in New Zealand as well.
We've had two of those already.
Two of those already. I haven't yet been to one of those, although it's on my bucket list as well. So, but yeah, I'm keen to get to have a little bit of a chat to hear about all that you're doing. Where I thought we might start is just a little bit, a sort of a who is this person, I suppose, just, tell us a little bit about yourself or your life or work, or what kind of excites you at the moment.
Yeah, what's the concept of self, though? We're just a flow of experiences of various aggregates, but we have to talk about the conventional self. So let's talk about conventional self. I have to give you the conventional answer. I'm a doctor, I'm a psychiatrist, and my specialty is sleep medicine. So majority of my patients have all sorts of sleep problems. And I've worked probably about 20 years or so in academia. Took a break from last year, but who knows what might happen. Everything changes. I might rejoin the whole academic drama again. I would say I've been a Dhamma practitioner, like mindfulness practitioner, and quite interested in a lot of Buddhist philosophy the past 15 years. And I was briefly a Buddhist monk in Myanmar in 2017. But outside of those heavy sounding stuff, I love kickboxing. It's very un-Buddhist. But I don't fight. I just spar with my coach. I also picked up boxing recently, but I swim regularly, ocean swimming and pool swimming. I have a partner. We've been together for, I'm not good with years. 22, 23 years. No kids here in Auckland. Most of my family is in the Philippines and in the US. So that's a short thing. I don't want to talk much about myself.
Yeah. Well. I mean, such a diverse range. You also, I don't think you mentioned the cello, which
Yeah.
is
That's my
also
yeah.
right there. Yeah,
Yeah, so my cello, I don't want to say it's my cello. The cello's with me for the next decades. I don't know who it will be the next life, but it's a cello made in 1775.
uh,
So it's a very old English cello. It sings really beautifully.
yes.
Even if I'm not super good, it still sings well.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. It's just, I mean, I find those sort of hobbies and activities just such an amazing combination. You know, sort of cello, ocean swimming, kickboxing, you know, Buddhism and philosophy. That's just such a wonderful collection. I actually, in some ways, would like to dive into all of those different bits, but I you know, there might be a bit much there almost for at the time that we've got. But yeah, so you sort of mentioned this interest in Buddhist philosophy. Can you sort of maybe talk more a bit about that bit?
Yeah, that's also an interesting twist in my life. So I grew up Catholic and I
Uh-huh.
was studying to be a priest at one point. And then I was even active as a cooperator with Opus Dei. I don't know if you know about Opus Dei, yeah, for many years in the Philippines. Then went to New York, changed my perspective on things. Like for the first time in my life, I had friends who were not Catholics. Like I have Jewish friends, Muslim friends, atheist friends. And for the first time, I started to question a lot of my previous belief system. So for a long while, wasn't involved in any philosophy or religion at all until I think 2004. I was in an airport in Sydney waiting for my flight, and then read a book written by the Dalai Lama and a psychiatrist. I would not have touched that book if it was just the Dalai Lama. I didn't care who the Dalai Lama. I knew who he was, but it's like, oh, it's just this interesting figure from the East. But since it was co-authored by a psychiatrist, I got the book. And it was a conversation between the psychiatrist Howard Cutler and the Dalai Lama that went on for, I think, a few years. And he wrote this book with the Dalai Lama. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, the richness of the teachings of the Dalai Lama, which is, embedded in Buddhism, it's so rich, particularly when it comes to mental health. And I'm a psychiatrist, and I actually thought I knew a lot about psychology. Like, oh, I trained in a really good school in the US. I had analyst supervisors. I had CBT training. I knew a lot about biological psychiatry. Then I realized there's so much out there from Buddhist psychology and philosophy that I did not know about, and it was just a huge turn on for me. Like, this is amazing. So that was my first foray into. Initially, it was an intellectual curiosity about Buddhist thought and philosophy, but later on, I said, well, I think I'll benefit from this. Let's try some of the practices like mindfulness and meta practice. So those two practices just, I would say, changed my life. So that's 15 years ago now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Yes, you have been a very spiritual person by the sounds of it. You know,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Yeah, probably I am.
well,
I still feel funny when someone says I'm spiritual, because I view myself as a realist.
yes,
Yeah,
okay, okay.
a here and now
Yeah,
person. But
perhaps sort of reflective then maybe,
yeah,
or kind of
uh,
thoughtful.
yeah,
And even growing up, you know, you were, I guess, in a certain context, and so there was a
yeah,
certain sort of flavour there that you know, became a natural sort of thing for you.
yeah.
But as you explored the world, you sort of were able to, you know, gradually pick up on various sorts of ideas and things. perhaps becoming a little bit more focused in on science and medicine, though,
Yeah.
and I guess that real world sort of stuff. And in fact, that's such an interesting point. You know, that there was this book and the connection that it offered with psychiatry was the thing that actually brought
Yeah.
you in. You know, it had it just been a book by the Dalai Lama, of which he's written many,
Yeah.
you know, that wouldn't have attracted you.
I
But it,
wouldn't have been interested in it.
yes, it was just this
Yeah.
connection there, and of course, you know, Buddhism is really very practical in many and
In
very
many
true
ways.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and kind of scientific in a sense too.
Yeah.
The
Very empirical.
mm,
One thing I like about it is it's very empirical.
yes,
It's try this, see what happens. You know, what are your reflections? Is it worth pursuing?
mm,
Yep. If not, then abandon it. So
yeah,
I like that approach versus you should do this, you should do that.
right. Yes,
Yeah.
the sort of the when a religion moves towards dogma, it's sort of
Hmm.
harder. But and I guess Buddhism can do a little bit of that too
Yeah.
sometimes in
Yeah.
certain
It can be. It can be
traditions.
like that too in certain groups. Yeah.
Mm. But there's that element of just observation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, observation externally and internally, and it's got that empirical, you know,
Yeah.
kind of piece to it. So you sort of discovered that and started the practice, the mindfulness and the metta kind of practice. How did that then become part of your, I guess, your life generally, but
Yeah.
also your work in psychiatry? What did you notice was the interface there?
I was actually I was practicing. You know, I'm a psychiatrist, but I was practicing at one point in a public mental health clinic, and I didn't know much about Buddhism yet, or even mindfulness. But I had patients who had severe personality disorders, and at the time they were learning a lot of DBT, approaches. They learned mindfulness, but from a Marshallinian approach, and it seemed to work with a lot of them.
Mm,
So that's why when I started to become aware of mindfulness, I was thinking, oh, since if this practice or this mindfulness approach, which is a little different from the Buddhist perspective versus Marshall Linehan's approach, if this works for my patients, it might work for me as well. So I was open to learning mindfulness. So I
mm,
went to a local Buddhist center here, learned mindfulness, and practiced it for initially almost every day for a few months, and then about a couple of months into my practice, I tend to self-reflect, like, is this working or not? Is this working or not? And then one day I was driving down the motorway, and there was a car that just cut across me, cut into my lane, and my response was, "Oh, there's a car that just got in front of me. Okay, I hope that guy doesn't get into an accident," which is a totally different reflex or response. And that's when I realized, probably the only thing different with what I've done is I've been doing mindfulness practice.
mm,
So I notice I'm less, I'm still reactive, but much less,
mm,
um, less judgmental, still judgmental once in a while. So I'm not enlightened, but so I noticed that transformation even just after a few months of practice,
mm,
two basic practices. In fact, meta practice for me was transformative, and that also led to my interest in the whole topic of compassion. So, and after probably 2-3 months of on and off meta practice, um, I woke up one morning. There were lots of ants on the kitchen bench, and normally I would kill them happily, spray them with Raid, wipe them, even thump them with a certain rhythm because I'm a little musical, boom, 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 killing all of them. And then this morning, I just looked at the ants and I said, I cannot do this. I cannot kill them. Not because of fear of negative karma or I'll go to hell or nothing. It's not that. It's more of I just can't. And then I remembered what some of my Buddhist friends told me about ants on the kitchen bench. Just clean the bench, take away the crumbs, but avoid the ants, and they will go away. And they did. You know, I think it will become more problematic. Like if you have a mouse infestation similar to New South Wales. I'm not sure what I will do if I'm a farmer. Probably I'll just stand there. But so I noticed that change in me, that it's actually hard to deliberately harm after doing metta practice. And then later on I realized that with patients, even with my colleagues, I became just a little easier, particularly when it comes to difficult interactions or difficult patients. I'm just more relaxed, more understanding towards them, knowing that, you know, all of us have our own dramas. This person is I'm perceiving this person as difficult at the moment because most probably this person has his or her own shit or drama going on at the moment. So I'm able to see through the difficult facade and realize, now that person's similar to me, really. So that's how the practice of metta and mindfulness um, seep through my personal life, interactions with others, how I live my life, but also into my practice as a doctor. And then later on became really interested in, can we actually make doctors and nurses more compassionate? So that was the PhD question eventually.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's,
Yeah.
I'm very keen to dive into your PhD, but I love the way that you are able to bring kind of that awareness to any given, you know, just small moment. You know, that there's so much insight to be gained, isn't there, from just little moments of experience when we turn our attention to that, and when we are aware, we're aware of the car cutting in front, and rather than going to some sort of default or autopilot mode where we might feel, you know, threat activation and sort of react with anger, or we don't go that way. We have a different sense of the other person. In fact, the sort of the notion that I hope they're okay. I hope they don't get into an accident or something. You know, they're obviously in a rush, and you know, there's a whole. So there's this sort of awareness and intention kind of combo there that is so powerful in that moment, and with you know, the ants as well. I can sort of relate to that. You know, you as we do the metta practice and the compassion practice, it just becomes, you know, much more kind of difficult to cause harm, and much more sort of a desirable sense of actually, you know, sort of being helpful in a sense, and actually, you know, removing that little drop of honey. You know, of course, ants would be drawn to that, but if I just wipe that little piece down, they'll wander off and do their own thing. That notion of, you know, certainly no unnecessary harm. You know, I guess if there was a mouse infestation or something, I'm not sure how that would
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know what to do.
Exactly. It would feel tricky. But yeah, really, those little the awareness and intention, and those little moments of noticing and insights, and then of course, kind of noticing that comes into the clinical session in a way, and this idea that, you know, people are suffering, and when they suffer, you know, they start to act or respond in ways that can be sort of difficult, and you know, one way to go is to feel frustrated or whatever by that and get tougher.
Which is normal, a normal response.
That's a very normal,
very common response.
But how can we shift? You know, how can we move towards, oh well, this person is just like me in a way, and they're suffering, and how, you know, approaching them with that sense of compassion.
So in my case, I think what helps in reminding me to do that if needed, is I have daily reminders. So I think definitely metta practice was the one that transformed it. I think. I think in combination with mindfulness, they go hand in hand. But when I wake up, instead of oh God, another day, I actually recite a short phrase by, I don't know if you know Shantideva, and it's a phrase that says, as long as the sky exists, as long as there are sentient beings, may I remain to help and relieve them of their suffering. And I would say that a few times, just to prime my mind that, okay, I have another day and I'll try to be as helpful as I can to as many beings as possible. So it's just a daily reminder. And then during the day, I have little reminders in my practice. Like I have this orange band, which we gave out in our conference, Compassion in Healthcare conference. And the orange band says, to be of benefit. So it's just a cognitive reminder. And the fact that we deliberately chose orange so that it sticks out. So it's, again, a reminder, you can be of benefit. And then I have little things around my clinic, like a picture of Mother Teresa, hidden, tucked somewhere, patients can't see it. Again, little cues of you can be of service. And I have a little Buddha statue hidden as well that only I can see. Again, little cues, because even with metta practice and mindfulness, I need to be reminded every day, because there are a lot of other emotions that come up. Sometimes you just want to strangle someone, but I think a regular motivation, a regular reminder, at least for me, helps.
Yes, it really speaks to that notion of compassion, I guess, as a kind of as a motivation,
as a motivation
and a commitment,
and not just a feeling of oh, I want to. No, it's sometimes you have to be tough
and action,
and action orientated.
Yeah, and Paul Gilbert, as you know, sort of often he speaks about that idea of remembering, the importance of remembering, because there's lots of motivations that the human brain, possesses, isn't there? And in any given moment, one or other of them might arise. So how do we remember to engage with the compassionate motivation and really set and kind of act on our intentions? I love that idea. And you have sort of little cues, little reminders, little things that just trigger it. And let's face it, when I walk into I went up to Chen Rezig recently, which is sort of north of Brisbane here, a sort of a Buddhist monastery or retreat, and you just feel different when there are these triggers and prompts around you. It sort of, you almost become sort of immersed in that, and it really brings that motivation to the forefront. So why not, have that around us in our daily lives?
And also, I mean, as a psychiatrist, I have to be very careful. So I have to do it very discreetly. I don't have a big Buddhist statue in my office. Nothing. It's stripped of any religion. But then I have my little cues. I have Mother Teresa and the Buddha that my patients will not see.
Yes. And of course, we can really individualize it too, can't we? It might be, for me, a picture of Bruno the chocolate Labrador, who for me is one of my compassionate others. And it's not really religious at all or something, but more just a little cue. Okay, that's something that he means to me, or this little figurine of an elephant is that's wisdom or something, or we might have a little thing on our person that sort of triggers it as well.
I also have on my phone, phones can be problematic in a lot of ways, but I try to use it skillfully as well. So I have a 1 hour reminder every half an hour or every middle of the hour. It's a very soft bell to remind me to just be present, to breathe, and also to remember to be compassionate. That other people will not notice the bell, but it's just quite soft. But again, it's just that Thich Nhat Hanh is very big on this mindfulness bells throughout the day, so we can remember it, because we forget and we have very busy lives.
Just going back to the metta practice, would you be able to elaborate a bit on sort of loving kindness and compassion meditations and how they are similar or different, or how they fit together?
I think, well, I'm not an expert on on the specific types of meditation. I think what I do is it's a mixture of both, but essentially, there are different stages, and the goal, I think, of the practice. This is what I get. The goal of the practice is to train ourselves to see everyone as exactly like us. I think that's the bottom line of the practice. But the way it starts is, an easy way to start it is thinking or imagining someone who cared for you, someone who loved you. So it can be a parent, can be a grandparent, teacher, and then imagining that person in front of you and wishing him or her kindness, that he or she be free from suffering, free from anxiety, that he or she have peace and contentment. And then you imagine the next person would be someone who you love, and then next person would be yourself, or next person will be, if you're a little good skilled with the practice, you might start thinking of someone who's a little difficult. I don't suggest that to beginners because it can be overwhelming. And then the last stage would be humanity, the rest of humanity and all sentient beings. Some people actually don't like this practice because they feel that, oh, it's too wishy-washy, it's too formulaic. So some teachers actually recommend that instead of using the regular phrases, that you can actually have your own phrasing and personalize the phrase to the person. So let's say you're thinking of your mother, instead of using the usual phrases of may you be happy, may you be free from suffering, is use phrases that are specific to your mom. Like, Mom, I know you're quite anxious about my brother right now. Hopefully you will be free from that soon. Or, I know you're struggling with Dad. May you and Dad, find a harmonious relationship sooner or later. So personalizing it. And like what I said, I think the bottom line of this practice is to see that all of us basically just want the same thing. We want to be cared for. We want to be free from suffering. We want to be free from anxiety, and that we want to go home safely, and we want to feel safe and be at peace and be content. So I think that's the gist of the practice. And I think that works for me. Training myself to see everyone, including, let's say, the perceived difficult patient, because the patient might not be difficult. It just be my own conditioning that makes him or her difficult. But not just patients, not just colleagues, but even the homeless guy, even the guy who's waiting in the bus station. But training yourself to once in a while look at people and view them as they're exactly like me. They're exactly like me. Deep inside, exactly the same. And I think from that, kindness and compassion flows easier. In fact, when I went to so I was ordained in Myanmar twice, 2 short stints as a monk. But the first monastery I went to, called Chanmyay Myaing monastery, they're famous or well known for their metta training. So the meditation the whole time you're there is metta. That drove me nuts. It was hard. And during the interview, like the supervision session with the abbot, I told him, yeah, I've been doing everything. It's so hard, but I'm doing it. And then he says, it's hard the first week. Usually by around, the end of the first week, start of the second week, a lot of times, it just gets easier and smoother. And he was right. after about 7 days, it was just easier to wish everyone, all beings, everyone you're interacting with, happiness, kindness, contentment, to be free from suffering.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of my conversation with Dr. Tony Fernando. In part 2, we'll be talking about his recent PhD, which explored compassion amongst doctors, some of the barriers and strategies for cultivating it. Thank you so much for your support of Compassion in a T-shirt, and I hope you can join me for part 2 of my conversation in session with Dr. Tony Fernando.